Hi, my name is Linda Carozza, and I'm going to summarize parts of a paper titled Building Communities in Online Learning, Reflections from a Decade of Teaching Online. I teach at York University and specifically in the Department of Philosophy. I've been teaching online courses in various formats, so blended and fully online for nearly a decade. So long before the pandemic forced the rest of us to teach online. And an observation I had about 5 years into teaching online was, why am I so tired? I mean, it wasn't an observation, it might have been a question. Why did I think teaching online would make more efficient use of my time? And was I doing something wrong? I knew and I expected that the first one or two iterations of a course would take extra time and effort. But I was expecting smooth sailing after that, and I wasn't experiencing that. So that led me on a little bit of a journey. I decided to get some assistance, some learning outside of my institution. I enrolled in a postgraduate certificate in e-learning, and it gave me a foundation in online pedagogy or digital pedagogy that I really needed. And so what I didn't notice I was missing was something that I learned about in reading a very short article on online learning. And I have to say, that saying, you don't know what you have until you don't know what you didn't have until you have it. Yeah, I didn't know what I was missing until I started to see and feel community in my online courses. And that's what this presentation is going to discuss. So I read an article about 5 years back, and it's called Wearing Four Pairs of Shoes, The Roles of E-Learning Facilitators. And so this was an article, it's a short piece, you can Google it, it's really short, but it was presented at a conference in 2002. And the author, Hutstein, what he argues or what he explains is that as e-learning instructors, we wear different pairs of shoes. So first and foremost, we are content experts, and this isn't anything new for us. Teaching face to face, we have to have some type of expertise to be teaching the courses that we teach in higher education. So moving on, this is new for us though. We are also program managers, at least in different ways. And so online, you need to be very clear with students, where are they going to find instructions for their assignments? When are they going to have those instructions live, or when are they going to be posted? When do they meet synchronously? Do they do all their work asynchronously? How do they connect with students that they have to work with? What are the netiquette rules? Where can they find them? Where are the links to complete quizzes? Are they going to be housed all together? Are you going to put them under each tab for each week of the course? And the list goes on, but all these organizational decisions that you make in designing your course, you need to make it clear to students as well. In addition to those two roles, we are also technical assistants. Now, I know your institution, like mine, may have IT help for students. They could submit service tickets and get responses. But if a student cannot open a PDF, I've posted a Word document. If they can't upload their assignment that's due in 12 hours, they're emailing me. And so oftentimes I am troubleshooting and trying to help students figure out why they can't access or successfully complete course components. And finally, the last one, and this was really the most impactful for me to read about. Maybe being an introvert, I completely ignored it, but it is social director. Um, we have to create an environment that fosters collaboration for learning. And that really was a missing piece in my course. So that sense of community that I'm going to talk about in this presentation comes from, the role of being the social director in our online courses. Now, I'm not going to argue whether it's fair for online instructors to be juggling all these roles, and whether we should have more assistants or a team of people to help with online learning. There's research that says as much, but I just wanted to sort of highlight that that this reality that we face as online instructors and the load that we carry. And so here are some questions related to that you can pause the video and review the questions and think about your own answers if you wish. So the question that really prompts the core of the paper is, how do I recreate online communities, or how do I create online communities, if you wish? So community in the classroom, in the online classroom. I had it in my face-to-face classes. It was something that was there and implicit. It really relied on our soft skills as people. So, the dynamic between me and the learners in my classes. And that was lacking in the online classroom. So what do I mean by community? A course community cultivates a sense of belonging, acknowledging that each instructor and learner is a unique and important participant in the course. It is associated with wide inclusivity, something that I continually have to hone to make sure I'm not excluding students from the learning process. Community can foster connection. When it's done well, it is energizing, it's exciting, and for students, it can be motivating. They're not learning on their own. They are part of a learning community. So when all this is said, I'll speak below about the technicalities or the actual criteria of a community online. But for me, community is a feeling. I know when it's there and I know when it's not. And so it really does boil down to a feeling that I have when the course dynamics are going well. And there are things that I need to embed in my course to make that happen. There is research on what is called a community of inquiry. So around 2000, you could see the authors at the bottom, Garrison, Anderson, and Archer, developed the concept community of inquiry. And what it does is it guides research on online teaching and learning. And it states that effective learning is generated through the intersection of three things: of social presence, cognitive presence, and teacher presence. And so if one wanted to have a definition of community that goes beyond you feel community, you can research community of inquiry. There's much more research post 2000 that elaborates and articulates a community of inquiry. So why do we care about community beyond the notion of a feeling that it generates, or how it actually occurs, or how it develops, gets fostered in an online class? There's further research that says, or that explains, that we're capable of deeper learning when our learning is encompassed in sociality. And that's Eiler, I've quoted, who I've mentioned here. We're social beings, and so fostering that learning in a social atmosphere or in sociality is important. And again, I admit that this is not something I was concentrating on. And so here are some strategies, and I'm going to have to go through these quickly, but some strategies, communication, and these are broad topics, like broad strategies. I can be more specific with the class that I'm going to give you as an example, but communication, timely feedback for students, cultural inclusion, care, and I don't talk about this after I mention it here, but care actually involves recognizing when your students are missing in action and nudging them, sending them a personal email, a personal message, and asking if you can help or if anything is wrong because you haven't seen them on the learning management system. Compassion. So it's teaching with a sense of compassion and teacher presence. And so I embedded some of these strategies in an online course. And It was successful. So in the summer of 2020, I decided, in collaboration or from the collaboration of meeting with colleagues and reflecting together, I thought about what I could do in my course, and I teach a skills-based course. So in a general education course that I teach every term, I was purposeful in adding a few elements to what I already had on the go. So communication from instructor to learners, I had much more of that. I always thought I don't want to, overwhelm my students with inbox alerts to course announcements. And so um, I refrained from that. I expected them to go on the learning management system and look for information. Well, that stopped. I now send a message, an email to my students every day that there is an optional synchronous webinar, and I give them the link and say, I hope to see them. I send announcements weekly that just let them know what the main, what the big issue, what the big tasks are, or if there are any deadlines the week during that week of the course. Communication amongst all participants in the course, there's forums, and not just a forum that's there in case students want to use it, but I prompt students. So I'll put a Padlet up in my learning management system, and I'll say, okay, for this project that you're working on, what types of software or ways would you present your information? Maybe you can, help others think about whether they want to create a PowerPoint, whether they want to create a video, and so on. And students will share with each other. In synchronous sessions, there's breakout rooms, and so students can communicate with each other. So the communication isn't always one way, instructor to students, but it's instructor to students, it's students with students, and it's instructor with students. At the beginning of a course, for instance, I introduce myself. I expect them to introduce themselves to each other. I also introduce myself, and I create a video or I post text with a picture, and they mimic that. So I really do set the tone, and I'm just I am more present in the course than I used to be. So the content really hasn't changed at all, but my presence, which does take a little bit more time, but my presence is, I think, creating a bit of a difference. So weekly tips, I give students tips regarding technology or regarding how to learn online when it's relevant to what they're learning or doing during a week. And the question forum, they get responses in less than 24 hours without fail. And I do think that's important. I think there's disagreement on this, on how available we are as instructors, but when students are learning asynchronously, you don't want them to lose momentum. And so for me, I have alerts when students ask questions. I make it my priority to answer those before I even answer anything in my inbox. And finally, assignment deadline extensions. I treat my students like people who have lives and things that come up in their lives. And I really do think that this makes a difference as well in fostering that community of autonomous people who are cared for. We care for each other. And so that's all I'm going to say about the strategies. I think that they have been helping. I have optional webinars weekly to just talk about the asynchronous lecture material. And I have more than 50% of students attending, and that didn't happen before. And I think that's a testament to all these different facets of the course that I've embedded that really do make them feel like they're a part of something. Just to be a little bit critical of teaching online, and for those of us who have these kinds of strategies, and for those who don't, and I was one who didn't prior to 2020. I really did. There's in moral theory, there's the concepts of ethics of justice and ethics of care, and the former treats issues as more universal. Equality between participants is important. It's more objective in nature, but it also left me a little bit detached. So the deadlines were the deadlines for everyone. For instance, this was the way that something was taught and everyone accessed it the same way. It was a very detached way from teaching online. And it did leave me exhausted, actually. And I can say, even if I'm doing more work now, I'm energized by my students because we're connecting with each other in ways that I didn't connect with them before. And an ethics of care really captures what I mean by teaching online and building community. So it's prefaced on a nonviolent behavior. It prizes particular knowledge, so treating students as individuals with lives and things that come up in their lives. It fosters relationships and it's empathic in nature. And I write more about this in the paper, but it's just something to a critical lens to sort of think about teaching online. And so here are some reflective questions that I welcome you to pause, review, and see if any of them speak to you. Some references that helped me build this paper and talk about some concepts. And finally, thank you for your time. And I would be happy to hear from anyone to talk about these in more detail.